Welcome back to Orange Chat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, episode 27 mystery review. Epime and Mara Jade Shadow, have also guessed this film. The film, I originally gave the hint Enya and Russell Crowe. However, I did get that wrong. Enya had no part in the soundtrack of this film. It is a huge myth that actually perpetuated because of how popular she was at the time. This film is a Ridley Scott film from 2000. It is called Gladiator, starring Russell Crowe, Joaquin Phoenix, Connie Nielsen, Oliver Reed. This movie was actually dedicated to the memory of Oliver Reed because he died the year prior of this movie's release, shortly after post-production. Richard Harris, Jaimin Hansu, Spencer Treat Clark, who played the young Lucius Ferris, Tommy Flanagan, Sir Derek Jacobi, and a slew of other great performers. Ridley Scott directed this film, and this film is truly a gift. It is actually a very well put together film. However, it does have its errors. Now, if you guys are wondering why I'm not speaking so loud, it's because I literally have my niece and nephew right over there. In fact, yeah. So that's why I'm going to keep it hushed. And I'm going to keep it as hushed as I can because I just got those two put down and I don't really want to wake them up. So, with that out of the way, let's get this show on the road. Epime the Oz, good to see you. So, yes. 1 second. Good to see everyone, our people in the chat. How are you all doing? I will be talking in hushed tones. Forgive me. But I do have my niece and nephew over there. Again, I'll show you all. There they are, sleeping very soundly. I just got my niece down. So, yeah. I'm definitely going to try to keep it down as much as I can so that they can enjoy their nighttime sleep. So, yes, Gladiator. That was the one that I guessed, or that was the one that I hinted at with Russell Crowe and Enya, which was a mistake. It was actually a mislead. I had to amend the hint to Now We Are Free, which is a part of the soundtrack. I also had the bonus hint, In This Life or the Next. And then I had the final hint, Shadows and Dust, which is something that is said in the film from Proximo, played by Oliver Reed. Now, this film starts out with a little title sequence or a little background of the period that it was in. At the height of its power, the Roman Empire was vast, stretching from the deserts of Africa to the borders of northern England. Over 1/4 of the world's population lived and died under the rule of the Caesars. In the winters of 180 AD, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, his 12-year campaign against the barbarian tribes of Germania, was drawing to an end. Just one final stronghold stands in the way of a Roman victory and a promise of peace throughout the empire. And then, hey, Epime, how you doing? Fucking colonists. Yeah, I hear you. Excuse me, folks. I need to, just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. I am getting sick because, well, the kids had the sniffles. So I'm basically going to be using a cough drop while I'll grab a couple of them. I almost want to click dislike just to give YouTube the middle finger, but I can't do it to you. Thank you. I appreciate that, Epime, because that would actually hurt my channel a lot more. Nephew. So, yes, let's get into it. So, the beginning of the film has Russel's hand going through the wheat. This is a very symbolic shot because it shows that above all else, he wants to go home. That is very apparent in this film. Russel Crowe has served his emperor. He's never even been to Rome, and yet he serves his emperor faithfully, and he does his best to earn the favor of the emperor through the actions of his deeds. Hello, Ref Girl. Good to see you. Yes, this movie is indeed a classic from 21 years ago. So, and then being brought back to himself in Germania among the burned battlefield. You literally see this battlefield looks like it's been through hell. The composers Hans Zimmer, Lisa Gerrard, and Klaus Badelt did a wonderful job scoring this film. Sorry. Maximus is already established as a respected general because as he's walking through his battle lines, all the men address him with respect. General, 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 you know. And looks like I got a spot on my glasses from trying to get my niece down. Very funny. But yeah, not funny in some ways, but funny in others. So, a rider, when he gets up to his second in command, Quintus, they see a rider coming. He has been gone for 2 hours, and then he returns without his head. Now you can tell that this was indeed just a dummy, because obviously you can't have an actor who is headless. But the way that the body moved on the horse, you could tell that it was lashed into the horse, you know? So it's actually a decent shot, but it does serve its purpose. It has its flaws. Now, this was basically for them to negotiate a surrender. Let me just clear up the screen here. And it was obviously rejected because the barbarians rally. And you see the head barbarian walk right up and just throw the head. It's like, nope, fuck you, is basically what they're saying. And then we get all of the army basically says strength and honor. That is one of the Legion's biggest taglines. And then we get the general on his horse riding off or out of his ranks and his dog is also with him. He reaches down and he also grabs some of the dirt and rubs it into his hands. It's kind of like a pre-battle thing with him. Then they go into the woods to rally a flanking unit. And then you see the flaming archers. Now, when drawing back after igniting their arrows, there are actually many arrows that went out or did not ignite. I thought that was a nice little mistake. I wonder if that's the origins of heads or tails. I'll have to look that up sometime to see if it is. But this movie does have a lot of graphic violence. I mean, the graphic violence of this film shows in its quality. When you see people slicing people's heads off, stabbing people, cutting people up, and whatnot, it really does show the gore. The gore factor is high. And this is the extended edition that I'm doing, which actually has 16 additional minutes. Now, the general's dog is an ears up dog. It's like a mix between a German Shepherd and a different type of dog. But when you see the dog is charging with Maximus, this dog is an ears down dog, different dog altogether, and it's a lot fatter. It's like, that is a huge mistake there. Where is the other dog? And you also see that Marcus Aurelius, played by Richard Wright, is just freaking brilliant in this film. He is a great actor, even though his time in the film, or Richard Harris, not Richard Wright, even though his time is brief in the film. Now, he watches from the distance, as an emperor will not put himself in harm's way. Now, the score during the fight sequence is incredibly familiar. If you really pay attention to this score, I guarantee you will have heard it, or very similar to a Disney movie that Hans Zimmer and Klaus Badelt also did, which was Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, if I could play the soundtracks, I would. But all I'm saying is go through the movie soundtrack of Gladiator and then go through the movie soundtrack of Pirates of the Caribbean. You will definitely see the resemblance. I mean, it's like they did it copy for copy. I'm like, what, you think that years later people won't recognize the same freaking score? So, yeah, it's a great score too, don't get me wrong. Now, the tempo of the battle score against the Germanians is the same score, or as the same as the score in Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, Hans wrote both, or Klaus Badelt wrote both scores, and Hans Zimmer composed both scores for both Pirates and Gladiator. The cutting in the battle scene does seem to be a bit choppy. However, you get most of the idea throughout the action because it's a very chaotic scene. Even the dog gets in on the battle because he's ripping into other people himself, and that's pretty good. Now, the score takes on a more somber tone as the film jumps into a slow motion shots as the battle ends, and then resumes once cutting away from the battle. We then see a Roman caravan after the battle, and it's the children of Marcus Aurelius, Connie Nielsen as Lucilla, and Joaquin Phoenix as Commodus. Commodus is a schemer. He believes his father will choose him as a successor now. Why else would he come call us if it wasn't if he wasn't dying, you know? That's got to be the best gladiator Commodus. That's got to be the best gladiator I've ever seen. Yeah, I know, right? Now, one thing you notice about Commodus, he is spoiled in a way that he didn't learn the lessons he should have, such as you don't boink your sister and you don't lust after your sister, because it really is disgusting, that sort of behavior. Now, the Emperor's age is also apparent. Richard Harris plays Marcus Aurelius in his latest years. And in the aftermath of the battle, Maximus tells the Emperor he would like to go home. And then Commodus rides in because he wanted to see the battle. And you could see that the tension between his father, the Emperor, and him are strained. And he's like, I shall slaughter 100 cows in your honor for your victory. Spare the cows. The victory belongs to Maximus. And you see that you could just tell that Joaquin Phoenix's character, Commodus, is not happy about him being shunned, you know? Back at the camps, when the first thing Maximus does is walk among the wounded. And then he goes to celebrate, because this is what a general does. He is a person that he cares about all of his men. And that is truly an admirable quality. And when he walks among them, he then goes to celebrate afterward. He meets two senators, thanks to Commodus, one who believes in the old republic-born Rome, and the other is imperial-led Rome. Commodus tries to recruit Maximus to battle for him against the senators once he succeeds his father, but Maximus intends to return home upon his freedom. Commodus constantly thinks that he is going to be the successor, that he is going to be the new Caesar, because, well, it has been under the imperial tyranny of Caesars throughout. Now, the next day, with an error after the party and merriment, a crew member walks between Maximus and the horse he is feeding. You can actually see the blue jean denim. And it's like, really? And then Maximus sees Commodus training, and you see that he actually has some pretty good sword work or swordsmanship. Then Caesar summons Maximus, and he tires of his rule. You could tell that Marcus Aurelius is indeed tired of all of the pomp, all of the circumstance, all of the hoopla that goes with ruling. And he asks Maximus to speak plainly. And you see Maximus's loyalty to his emperor is absolute, and he worships Rome. And Marcus tells him, he's like, but you've never been to Rome. You do not know what it is like. There is a dream that it was Rome, but that's all it is. If you speak about this dream, poof, it is on. It is a very tenuous and very fragile thing. Now, Marcus Aurelius also wants to return Rome back to its people, not the Caesars, describing his home to Caesar and how long he's been away. 2 years, 264 days, and this morning is how long he's been away. Maximus's, that is. So Marcus gives his last order to Maximus to deliver his final wishes to Rome and to deliver Rome back to the people, to end the corruption that has crippled it. It is because of his ignorance that he was chosen. His ignorance in what it is like. He's not a politician, so he's the perfect choice to say these are the last wishes of Marcus Aurelius. He wanted to return Rome back to the Senate and its people. Happy Dinosaur, good to see you. I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate that this movie is basically Jor-El versus Joker. No wonder Superman never liked the Joker. Yeah. Of a sense, indeed. So then we see Lucilla and Maximus after he leaves the tent and says, I need to think about this. And he says, you have until the end of the day. So then you see Lucilla walk up to Maximus, who she still fancies Maximus. She actually loves him. Even when she was married and Maximus was also married, they still had a thing for each other. Now, then we get to the prayer sequence where Maximus talks to the figures of his wife and child, and you see his servant Cicero, played by Tommy Flanagan. At this time, he was younger and a lot more vibrant of an actor. He's a great actor still, Tommy Flanagan. I mean, he still has that scar in his cheek that he actually got in a bar fight, I believe. But yeah. So then we see that after Maximus is done praying before his wife and child figures, we then cut to Marcus talking to his son, and how he's telling him, you will not succeed me as Caesar. I am giving my powers over to Maximus only so that he can deliver my final wishes to give Rome back to the people. Well, Commodus plays the biggest guilt trip ever, and then he kills his father. He literally suffocates him with a hug. And this scene is actually very good because it truly shows the range of Joaquin Phoenix, how he can be so gentle, but yet he can also be so conniving. He can be so manipulative. It really is wonderful acting on this part. And Richard Harris is a great actor in his own right. God bless the man. God bless him, and may he rest in peace. Then Commodus seeks out Maximus and demands his loyalty. Well, Commodus and his family killed and decreed Maximus, or had his family killed, and Maximus is charged with betrayal and disloyalty, so he's also going to have to die. Now, Maximus also escapes and kills the Praetorians and takes 2 horses to ride home. And when he gets there, his family was crucified and burned. And the emotion that Russell Crowe shows at looking at his family in their very dead state, it really is great acting. It's award worthy. This movie had awards, I do believe. So we then see him bury his family, and then he falls asleep at their graves, and then he's taken by slavers. His wound is being cleansed by maggots. You actually see the maggots in the wound, and Jaimin Hansu is there with me, tells him, he's like, leave them, they will clean it. And he helps him heal as they are transported to Zuccabar, a Roman province. And Proximo buys Maximus and Juba. Juba is Jaimin Hansu's character. And he buys him from a slave trader who is also the same. He's the warden from the movie The Mummy. He's that guy. Yeah. Who also ended up selling Proximo queer drafts because apparently they would not mate. And he's like, you sold me queer drafts. Excuse me. Yes, they eat dead flesh anyway, but there's also a thing there's also medicinal maggots, believe it or not. They're bred into a sterile environment so that they can be used for medicinal purposes. Now, let's see here. Yep. Proximo tells his newest slaves, after he buys them, that that he is to profit from their death, basically. He essentially is like, you are here to make me money and die. It's modern medical treatment we use even now. Yeah. Now, one of the things I really like is how they go into the first pre-battle, where they are all being tested for whose colors. And Maximus goes by Spaniard, and he refuses to fight. And Hagen is a slave that's trying to help distinguish which slaves are good for fighting and which are not. Well, Maximus outright refuses, and he gets smacked around a little bit, and then Proximo tells him it's not his time yet, give him a little bit. So when brought into the arena, however, he fights and wins. The pre-battle, and also during the pre-battle, you see one slave actually piss themselves. It's like, ugh. So then we cut to Rome afterward, and the false emperor returns with his public actually screaming out and hating on him. And the politics of Rome, you have Sir Derek Jacobi, Gracchus, also known as Alexander Corvinus from the Underworld movie, Underworld Evolution specifically. And he is a great actor. I mean, Sir Derek Jacobi is an actor that deserves an award for pretty much every film he's done. He's just that good at it, or that good. And Commodus wants to abolish the Senate through blood. After meeting with the senators and learning what they have in store for him, he hates the Senate. He wants to abolish it. He's like, I will have these people love me. And he wants to open the Colosseum for games to keep the people in line and loving him. So yeah, basically give the people a spectacle and they will love you. Well, yeah. So then we cut back to Proximo and Maximus talking, and he's like, or he tells him, be an entertainer, not a butcher. You've been killing all these people over and over, but killing is easy. Try to entertain them as well. And we get that, or we get him brought out into a arena again, and he just slaughters everyone in there, and then he throws the sword at some of the rich people, and he yells, are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? You know? So the other people love him, the dregs of society, so to speak, and because he is defying the institution through his obedience. And Proximo then talks to Maximus, telling him about the Colosseum and how Proximo was once a gladiator who won his freedom, and that he won his freedom from Marcus Aurelius. He was freed through battle. Win the crowd, win your freedom. Now, Juba and Maximus talk about seeing their loved ones in another life. And the sweeping shots of the weather are all well shot, because when they show the passage of time, they show sped up shots of the weather passing through the area. It really is great. Just chuck them some bread. The masses love free shit. Just look at them. Yeah. Yeah. And then you got to, or one thing that you really do have to admire is how well this film is actually put together. This film, almost being 3 hours, is actually quite well paced. It's slow, and it builds, and it's a slow burn, but it's a good burn in this way. So then they get to Rome, and Commodus, looking at his nephew Lucius in a disturbing way as he sleeps, Lucilla gives him a tonic, and Commodus has an incestuous love for her sister, or lust for her sister. And that night at Gracchus's estate, Lucilla visits. You see the cloak and dagger. And one of the things about Gracchus, Sir Derek Jacobi's character, is that all of his servants are mute and deaf, so that they cannot spy or be heard. You know? And it's like, that is pretty ingenious. So then they are going over how Commodus is destroying Rome. They discuss how any dissidents who speak out against the emperor are being arrested, and how the way that he is paying for the games in the Colosseum is he's selling the reserves to fund the games. He is literally selling years worth of grain in the reserves of Rome's food to fund the games. And Rome will be basically dead in 2 years because of this. And also, Lucilla tells the senators that the Senate will soon be dissolved, and then she speaks of her own fears for her son and how her brother needs to die for her son's safety. They choose to wait him out. However, they said you can't trying to kill him now would be pointless. So they choose to wait him out, as the people will start to turn against him because of the poverty and the famine that comes with it. Proximo then gets to the games, and he's assigned the Massacre of Carthage, where his slaves are basically to play the barbarian horde. And his fighters are supposed to lose that battle. Lucius sees Maximus in the cage, and he talks with them, and Maximus leads the other slaves And that's where Maximus learns who this boy is. And he's like, oh my God, you're Lucilla's son, basically. He doesn't say this much. And Lucius takes an interest in Maximus. He's like, I like you, Spaniard. I shall cheer for you. And so then we get the battle of the barbarians versus the Legion, the Battle of Carthage. And Maximus, he's like, stay together and we will survive. And he leads them to victory, even though they're supposed to lose. Maximus, and the Commodus's reactions during the battles are very funny. Also, they bring out chariots, which one of them, when it tilts over, you actually see the fabric fold, and then you see the gas can underneath, and it's like, oh shit, you know? So when the battle is over, you see Commodus saying, my history seems to be a little rusty, but aren't the barbarians supposed to lose the Battle of Carthage? Yes, Your Eminence. Forgive me, sir. And he's like, who is this gladiator? I would like to meet him. And you then see Maximus on a horse with a spear ready to throw. He's actually ready to throw the damn thing at the emperor. And then he stops when the emperor gets up to leave. So then he gets off his horse and he rallies the men, and they all are told to stay still and drop their weapons in the presence of the emperor. And the emperor tells him to rise when he kneels, and he grabs an arrow, getting ready to stab the emperor. But his nephew, Lucius, comes in, which causes Maximus to not go out with it. And after defying him, he's like, what is your name? And so if you turn your back on the emperor, that is basically a treasonous act. And he's like, how dare you turn your back on me? Slave, you will remove your helmet and tell me your name. Well, then he does. My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, general of the northern armies of Rome, husband or father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next. And you see the shock on, Commodus's face, and he's like, and then he looks at Quintus, who also was supposed to have him killed. Oh, hold on one second, folks. Had to put her over there instead of over there. So I'm going to take this to a different room. I'll be right back. Okay. This should be a lot better. So, where was I? Yeah. Maximus just basically reveals himself, and we see the Emperor react hastily, in a sense, and he has the weapons brought up on him. Probably wake up because that epic speech of vengeance got her blood pumping. I know, right? And when he says, I'll have my vengeance in this life or the next, hence one of the hints of this movie, yeah, the Emperor does react hastily and people draw their weapons, but then the crowd are chanting, live, live, live. And so the Emperor is put in a very uncomfortable position where he has to judge. And he puts his thumb out like this. And then he puts his thumb up like this. And he gives Maximus a very dark look. And he's like, yeah. So, after the scene is done, you then see Maximus raise his helmet to the crowd to gain their favor and their support, and he's thankful for the crowd. The crowd just did save his life. So then in the next scene, which is actually part of the extended edition, Commodus goes down to one of his father's busts, those statues of just shoulders and head, and he just starts taking a sword to it, really pissed off and whatnot. And then he talks with his sister about how he is very vexed. This vexes me. I'm very vexed. And he's like, what did you feel when you saw him? And she's like, I felt nothing. And he's like, didn't you two used to care for each other? That was a long time ago. Well, how am I supposed to kill him now? The people love him. So then later on, Maximus is taken to meet with Lucilla. And in this scene, we get the famous line, today I saw a slave become more powerful than the Emperor of Rome. The crowd starts chanting, let's go, Brandon. Boy, you guys are sometimes the Aussies are a lot more American political than we are, you know? And I do love, he's like, and Maximus is angry at Lucilla. He's like, your brother killed your father. How do you not hate him for that? And she tells him, I am afraid for my son. You have no idea how afraid I am and how I have to basically protect my son against a monster. And that's not enough to sway Maximus. Maximus sends her away in anger. He's like, guard, the lady is done with me. And so we get to another extended scene or additional scene where Commodus, the Caesar, basically decides to make an example of his legion because they were supposed to know, or they should have known whether Maximus was alive or dead. they confirmed he was dead. So he has Quintus kill two of them, or give the order. He forces Quintus to give the order. And this sets up Quintus's hatred for him, or hatred for the emperor later on. Now, Hagen, the big slave that was training the slaves to see what color they would wear for certain arena battles, he befriends Maximus. And I like during his talk, and everybody basically is now treating Maximus differently because they know that he was a general in the army. And he is just about to eat a soup when Juba, Jaimin Hansu's character, shakes his head. And then you see Hagen just take a spoonful of his stuff, or of Maximus's soup, and just shove it in his mouth. And then he's like, wah. He starts, our politics are boring by comparison. Yeah, I know, right? Speaking of which, Biden thought his sister was his wife as well. Oh my God, that is just disgusting, but also hilarious. Hey, how you doing, Price is Right? How you healing up, bub? So, yeah. During the next day of the games, Caesar brings out bread for the people. Cicero is also attending. Cicero is Maximus's servant, played by Tommy Flanagan. He attends this day at the arena to see, is the rumors true? Is this person alive and whatnot? And then we get Maximus fighting a former gladiator known as Tigress. The emperor basically tells his sister, it's like, it's already been done. It's already been arranged. She's not going to live through this fight. And he has tigers come up from the pits to attack Maximus as the fight between him and Tigress go on. Now, they pull the tigers back so that they can't claw at Tigress, but they do let him have slack for Maximus. And the people catch on to this and they start booing. Cicero is razor fists doggy. Okay. Gladiator. Yes, it's Gladiator. So then when the battle is nearing its end, Maximus kicks Tigress to the ground, and when you see him hit the ground, his mask is off because he has a mask that slides down. But then when they get to the next shot of Maximus getting down, he removes the masks, and the emperor does the whole thumb thing where he's like, he goes up and then down really quick to basically say, I shall not be merciful. I want Maximus to kill this man, to make him seem like a butcher. Well, Maximus refuses, still gaining favor from the crowd. And they chant Maximus the Merciful. And then the emperor comes back out and tries goading him, telling him how his child squealed as they tortured him, and how his wife moaned like a whore, that's their words, as they ravished her again and again. And this does piss off Maximus. You do actually see him angry about this. But he also turns to him and he's like, your life is nothing. He basically tells the emperor off. I cannot remember the exact words, but he's like, fuck you, dude. You're not going to get me to do what you want. So then Cicero talks to Maximus, and he tells him, he's like, tell the men that their general lives. And then he talks to Juba later, and then Commodus is whining later on. They call him Maximus the Merciful, and he's losing his temper, and he's then consoled by his faithful senator. And his faithful senator tells him, he's like, just kill Maximus. That's all. That would make him a martyr. Well, fine. Order all the senators to be followed. And so then Maximus gives Cicero a task to contact Lucilla and tell her that he will meet with her politician. He then goes to that politician to try to convince him to smuggle Maximus out. And he's like, all of the armies are now under control of people loyal to Commodus. Let's see where their loyalties lie when they see me alive. I love that. And he's like, well, how am I supposed... So what? You're going to invade Rome? Take over? Is that it? No. I'm going to kill Commodus, and then I'm going to give Rome back to the people. These were the last wishes of Marcus Aurelius. These were the last wishes of a dying man who had a dream of Rome. A dream of Rome to be a republic once more. And so the entire scene is very well acted out. So then the deal is made, and Proximo notices that he's being watched when the deal maker is being sent to meet with Proximo from Gracchus. Well, Gracchus is no fool. He knows that he's being watched, and he's also sees that the person he was supposed to meet was also being watched. And he then learns the truth of Commodus because he talks to Maximus. He's like, it's too dangerous and whatnot. Yes, you will most likely get your freedom, but what will that get you? And then he turns to him and he says, Commodus killed the man who set you free. So we then get the arrest of Senator Gracchus, where the Praetorians go to arrest him, and then Commodus tries seducing his sister. The scene shows this scene where he's just being so fucking slimy. You see the revulsion on Connie Nielsen's face. She is just purely repulsed by her brother. And even when he's up close to her and lays her back and he tells her that he loves her and she's like, as I love you, you could just see that she is just even though she's not betraying any hint of it, you can tell that she is very uncomfortable in her own skin during this time. Commodus, the real historical one, if my Roman history is correct, was murdered in his own bathtub. Yeah, probably. Scrub-a-dub-dub, dead Commodus in the tub. Jesus. Maximus versus Spartacus, that would be a fun fight. You know what? I might just have to look that shit up. Might make a good versus stream in the new year. So Lucilla then meets with Maximus to tell him he has to escape that night because they just arrested Gracchus. And you also get a lovely little tug between him and Lucilla, because they do say to each other that they still love each other, but that love can never be rekindled, you know? It's still there, but it was fidelity to others that kept them apart. And then Lucius is playing with Commodus as Commodus is up late night sparring with wooden swords, and Lucius starts sparring with his uncle, and he's like, I'm Maximus, the savior of Rome. Savior of Rome? And who told you this? And so he whispers it to his uncle, and then his uncle starts telling him of different stories, and Lucilla sees that Lucius is being told about about some treachery that has been in one of their ancestors' time. And while you could tell that even Lucius knows that there's more to this story that he is being told, and that Commodus basically is letting his sister know without saying as much, I know you have betrayed me. I know what you are doing. And it really is a well done scene. It shows that Commodus is indeed a threat. He could kill his nephew at any moment. And he is not afraid to do so. It shows you just how far that, without stating as such, just how far he would go to get what he wants. to stay emperor. So then Commodus strikes out against the Senate. You see the Viper going in the bed of one of the loyalist senators, and the Praetorians go after Proximo and his slaves. Proximo does not open the gate. He actually goes to the keys, gives the keys to his slaves, and he tells them, shadows and dust and strength and honor, and your man is waiting for you outside the walls. So then he goes up and he takes a look at his Rudius, which is a wooden sword signifying his freedom. Commodus Biden creepily whispering in kids' ears, nothing new there. Yeah, I know, right? And Rough Girl, good to see you. Master of Fear, thank you for stopping in. This is the best part of the movie. Yes, indeed. The failure, or his failure to escape, and also Hagen, the big slave, also dies, but everybody except Juba basically dies. And Cicero is outside the walls, but he's also strung up or lynched up. And when he sees his general, the horse bolts and he's hanging. And so the general goes up and he's like, I'm sorry. And then he gets a bunch of arrows stuck into him. And the Praetorians basically reapprehend Maximus. So the next day, Commodus basically takes custody of Lucius as a hostage and declares that his sister, if he even looks at her, or if she even looks at him with disgust, Lucius will die. If she doesn't do as he tells him, Lucius will die. If Lucilla does not be his mate and provide him with a pure heir to the throne, so that Commodus and his progeny can live on for 1,000 years, Lucius will die. Basically, he is making it intent that you're going to let me fuck you, and you're going to have my kids, even though you're my freaking sister. He's truly just gone off the fucking deep end. So the music score from Hans Zimmer is timeless for this film. Not exactly. Well, actually, yeah, in a way it is, because it's pretty much the same freaking score for Pirates of the Caribbean. If you look at the battle scene fight, or if you look at the battle of the beginning of this movie, the score, and then you play it with Pirates of the Caribbean score, you will notice the same freaking score is basically there. I mean, yeah, that is the same freaking score in both movies. It's like, because it's also from the same writer, Klaus Badelt, and Hans Zimmer is the composer of both films as well. It's absolutely nuts. So then he tells him, he's like, am I not merciful? Am I not merciful? He yells at her. So then it's the final scene in the Colosseum. And you see Maximus strung up. And the Colosseum is basically cheering for Maximus, the general who became a slave, the slave who became a gladiator, the gladiator who defied an emperor. And then Commodus sets a challenge between him. And he's like, what better spectacle than a gladiator versus the emperor himself? And he's like, so what? No, nothing clever to say. And he's like, and he gives a witty reply. I cannot remember it off the top of my head. I felt this was like Braveheart. Yeah, that's actually going to be discussed this Friday night, Rough Girl. I believe you are on that. You are going to be on that panel with Ambassador as well. It's going to be at 8:30 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. though. Commodus with his mail in ballots under Maximus's armor. Jesus Christ. So then, before he parts with Maximus, he actually stabs him, giving him a disadvantage because he stabs him basically in the kidney area. And it's a bad wound, and he tells him, put on his armor and conceal the wound. And so we then get to the fight between them, and Quintus is the moderator. So the fight between Maximus actually cuts up Commodus a little bit, and Commodus also gets a couple slices in on Maximus. But when Maximus slashes away Commodus' sword, he's like, Quintus, give me your sword. I'm hearing somebody outside. I'm sorry. And he's like, Quintus, give me your sword. And then Quintus doesn't. And then he goes to his other guards and they start to unsheath. And Quintus goes and he's like, sheathe your swords. Sheathe your swords. And that's when the emperor basically realizes, oh shit, I'm fucked. And he pulls a knife from under his gauntlet and tries to kill Maximus. And Maximus then forces or cowers the arm and holds the knife and then shoves it right into Commodus' throat, basically making him dead really, or slowly. It is a very brutal death. So while this is after this happens, you see Maximus basically delirious from his dying, and he's opening the door to his home in the other world, yet Quintus draws him out of this, and he's like, Quintus, release the prisoners and release Senator Gracchus. There was a dream that was Rome, and that the Rome is to be given back to its people and the senators. Power is to go back to the senators. And so he tells him, and he's like, this was the last wishes of Marcus Aurelius. And then he falls back and he starts to die. And Lucilla goes to Maximus, and she sees him looking up in the distance, or distantly, and she's like, go to them, you are home. And you see him walking through the fields and seeing his wife in the other world, the afterlife of Maximus, returning to his family. And she then has the slaves who have come into the Colosseum, and Senator Gracchus as well. And she's like, he was a loyal soldier to Rome. Honor him as he honored us. And you see even Lucius walking up when they're like, who will help me carry him? And all the slaves basically get up to help him. And Lucius also walks them out as well. And then you see Juba, who is now free, bury the figures of Maximus's family. And it is very emotional. I actually did tear up a little bit. And he's like, I am free. And one day I will see you again. But not yet. Not yet. And then he leaves the Colosseum where he buried the figures. And then the credits roll, and you see that this movie was dedicated to the memory of Oliver Reed. So now we are going to get on to the scores for the film. Objectively, I would put this movie at about an 8. There are some big errors, like the freaking gas can in a chariot. You also see a guy in blue jeans. Yeah. So there's some problems with this film objectively. It's a good film. It's a solid film. 8 out of 10. But when you have those kind of glaring futuristic things in a movie, it kind of hurts the movie. Subjectively, though, I will actually give this movie a 10 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. It is worth watching, especially the extended edition. I really like the extended edition. This movie, it's an additional 16 minutes, but it does give you some extra added context to some of the film, which does help improve it, where these moments are very well done. Because honestly, the theatrical is objectively a 7, where the extended is an 8, objectively. And moviegoer, it's a slow burn, but it's also entertaining. So I will put it at about a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, depending on how well you like these movies. And yeah, so getting on to the hints for the next movie. The hints are Scat and Robert Patrick. So if you can guess what those movies are, do not put them in the chat. I will be putting the hints out for on Twitter for people to guess. And if you know it, do not spoil it for people. I'd like to keep that basically. I want to keep it fun for people to try to guess. With Scat and Robert Patrick, I'm pretty sure that some people will be able to guess it easily. It's a very good, or it's a very entertaining movie that I saw when I was younger. Anyway, folks, that is going to be the review. Thank you so much for tuning in. Rough Girl, Epime, Price is Right reviews, Happy Dino. Who else? Master of Fear, and many others who may not have chatted in the chat. Thank you all so much for coming in. You are all amazing and awesome people. Stay tuned for Friday's stream, where I will be discussing Braveheart with Ambassador and Rough Girl. So, yeah, that's going to be a great one. Terminator 2 is getting another review. Sweet. How do you get, well, Robert Patrick, yeah, but nope, that's not it. And yes, thank you and great review. Thank you. And 10 out of 10 would be Ben-Hur. Yeah. I've never seen Ben-Hur, to be completely honest. But yeah. So that is going to be the mystery review. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. You all know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What did you think of Gladiator? Sorry, had a brain fart for a second. Let me know all your thoughts, folks. Did you like it? Did you not? What were your favorite moments? Anyway, folks, this has been Orange Hat Reviews. Stay humble.